We booked an exciting guest for this week, an immigration and criminal defense lawyer and a first-time novelist, and somehow a Washington University Law School alumnus. Welcome to Third Song In with Chris Derrickson and Tom Polachek. Bami Adelayo has been practicing law for over 21 years. He currently practices in Phoenix, Arizona, primarily focusing on immigration, criminal defense, and personal injury. He received an LLB degree from Ogun State University in Nigeria, and he received his JD and LLM from Washington University in St. Louis. He emigrated from Nigeria to the U.S. over 27 years ago and has just published a novel titled Japa Saga, Timmy's Search for the American Dream. Welcome to our podcast, Bami.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Chris.
You bet.
So you're currently living in Phoenix. I met you as a young assistant state's attorney, prosecutor in Will County, Illinois, here where I live. And I'd say we became acquainted well enough to be Facebook friends, which that's, I guess, a level now of friendship that you can talk about. I've been following your progress kind of on Facebook, other social media, what have you. It sounds like you've created a nice career and life for yourself out in the Southwest. How's things going?
Things are going well. And you forgot to mention, Tom, when we met, you were very nice. You're one of the nicer ones. Yet.
I always fail to mention that. I don't know why.
Yeah, you were very professional, courteous. Because at times, people come into court. I don't know what it is, but you were very nice. And so that's one of the reasons why I think we kept connecting. And I think once in a while, you would also post stuff about your kids' soccer. On your kids' soccer travels or whatnot on Facebook, and so I'm like, oh yeah, so you like soccer, and for me too, that's a huge draw. So
yeah, one of the things I failed to mention in your intro as well was that apparently you are a monstrous Liverpool fan for the Premier League. So I didn't realize that when we first met, but the older my kids have gotten into soccer, the more I realize just how important that is.
It is important. I cannot believe you forgot to mention it. Anyway, life in the Southwest is treating me well. So when we moved out here from Chicago in 2010, and it's going to be 15 years in August. And at the time, I did some immigration work I did primarily criminal in Joliet. But then when we moved out here, I just, focused more on immigration because I have, passion for immigration and also because of my background. And, it just took off. It took off more than my criminal practice. And so that's how I became more focused on immigration. I still do criminal defense and personal injury, but my immigration practice is a lot more, has grown more than the other parts of my practice.
I would imagine being in Phoenix in particular that there's plenty of work coming in the door on a regular basis.
Yeah, so that is true because, Phoenix, Arizona borders Mexico. Mm-hmm. So we have, I want to say maybe an entry point in the south, Rocky Point, Sonoita, and we border Mexico. So that's I think another reason why we have a lot of immigration cases coming through the border.
Have you found with the new administration and their manic focus on immigration and have you found that that's created more work for you or different work for you? How has it affected what you do on a daily basis in your practice?
More work, and people are more afraid. Our phones have been ringing off the hook. I met with a lady yesterday, and there's no pathway. She's been in the U.S. about 30 years. She's got 3 children, and the concern was, well, what should I do if I get pulled over? Okay, what should I do? How can I protect myself? And, she kept asking questions about how she could get a green card, even though there was just no pathway. Because what you have to understand sometimes is if you come in without a visa, it's just almost impossible to be able to get a green card, to be able to regularize your stay in the U.S. Because of the laws around it, which makes sense. You don't want people coming through the border and then, they have children, and then before you know it, they apply for. So that part is difficult. Now, if you enter a visa, then things are different. Okay, so yeah.
Just following you and your practice on Facebook, one of the things that it certainly appears to be is that your practice seems to require a lot of hand holding. And I would say more personal interaction than, for example, what I do with, because I'm primarily personal injury at this point. I like my clients for the most part, not all of them, but I don't have to necessarily have quite as intimate contact, I think, as it seems like you do. I see lots of pictures of people with big happy smiles on their faces after you've been able to do something successful for them. Is that taxing on you? I mean, I'm sure the good things are really good, but I also imagine it can be tough, particularly, in this day and age.
You hit it straight on the head, Tom. It's personally fulfilling, okay? And personally fulfilling for me because I came through the system. So I kind of know what they're going through. I know what it feels like when you want to bring a child from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Egypt, they've been stuck there because of some delay, right? But it's taxing in the sense that there's at times there's just nothing you can do. There's absolutely nothing you can do other than to communicate with the government, to contact the government, and especially when they're outside the country, it's very, very taxing. And you have clients sending you emails, text messages almost daily. And at times it borders on abuse too. At times like you have to tell yourself, like, hey, listen, you know what? I don't need to deal with this. Let's reconnect when things, when you sleep on this, when emotions are tempered, okay? But yeah, sometimes it can get a little taxing. And by the same token, you have people that are very, very happy. Some people in abusive relationships, they get out, get the green cards, and they're very happy because they did not know they can have a path to getting the green card.
I feel that you touch on a lot of that emotion in the novel. I read Japa Saga. I finished it about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Really enjoyed it. You and I, as I said, we're not close friends. We don't know each other's personal history very much, but I feel like I got a peek into your life, or at least big chunks of your life, as you moved from Nigeria to the U.S. And a lot of that emotion, I pictured you dealing with that on the client side now as an immigration attorney. And I thought you did a really nice job of communicating that through the book.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is a weird question. Are you an American citizen?
Yes, I am an American citizen. I came here 28 years ago, March, because at the time the book was published, it was 27, so it's not 28.
Yes. Oh yeah. That's right.
March 8th to 2025 was my 20th anniversary that I arrived in the United States. And I became a U.S. citizen, I want to say about 6 years later, because I was fortunate. Okay.
And did you come on a student visa? What was the original entry to the country?
Sure. I get that a lot. So now, if you read the book, there's a part where I applied for a lottery, which is true. That is a true part. Yeah, that's a true part.
That's amazing.
It's life-changing. And at the time, back in the 90s, Congress, and I want to say Bill Clinton signed a law whereby people that believed that their population were low in the United States could apply for immigrant visa. And so at the time, back in the 90s, I think the Nigerians in the United States and the diaspora, the population wasn't that much at the time. So that kind of opened it up, because apparently they just wanted to balance the immigration influx into the United States. I shouldn't say influx. They wanted to balance the immigration, I should say, population in the United States. So I was fortunate, and I was in college at the time, and I applied. I never thought it was going to happen. Just as the book said, I applied at a rickety location. Sent in my I took my entry to my father and say, hey, I don't want you to mail this at the local post office. I want you to take it to the airport. Because why? They were taking the mail from the airport directly to the United States. So I didn't want it to get lost. My father looked at me like I was crazy, I said, can you please do that for me? And I did. Like myself and 2 or 3 other people did it. And I forgot about it. And then I want to say a couple of months later, I don't know, I went home, on vacation, say, I was watching TV, and I think your application went in the smoke. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, at the time, we had a military ruler, Abacha, who found out that a lot of Nigerians were applying for the lottery visa, and they just burned the applications. So I forgot about it. I never thought anything of it. I never thought anything was going to come out of it until about a year and a half later, when I got selected. So
That
I completed the process. Even at the time when I got selected, my father, he still did not believe in it. My father is the sort that not until, because in Nigeria you have to see things to believe. Because there's a lot of showmanship, there's a lot of con, and so people have to see things. So not until I got to the embassy and they actually gave me my visa and he saw it was when he believed that, yes, you're actually going to be going to the United States.
that's amazing. I think I told you before we started recording that a lot of my questions were going to be, all right, so your book says this. Is this true? And that was one of the things.
Correct.
Your
Correct.
description of the lottery and then the news report. I think in the book you write that there's an image of basically them burning
That's
like a
true.
whole
That's
stack of.
exactly, that's a true story.
That's just
It's
amazing.
a
And
true
then
story. And the comment that the military spokesperson made he said basically something to the effect of, well, we just don't want our kids going, to be enslaved in the United States. It was bogus. It was just that they didn't want people leaving because the
right.
younger people were leaving in droves. I mean, and they were going to be enriching, other countries. That was the main reason. It wasn't as though they were being enslaved and people were leaving of their own volition. Nobody, forced me to leave. I left because I wanted to leave. I wanted greener pasture. That's why I left.
Well, I think you know that both Chris and I attended Washington University in St. Louis. We both went there as undergraduates. And then I did eventually, I took a year off, but then I graduated from the law school there as well. How did you find your way to WashU Law School?
That's a good question. I believe when I was when I was in Houston, okay, at the time I was searching for law schools and I applied I think I was reading up, or I went to the library and got a bunch of brochures, right? And so when I saw, the LLM program, because I already have a law degree from Nigeria, and I thought, okay, you know what, I'm going to finish my LLM program because again, that you have some misinformation when you come in, from the Nigeria or from any other country to the United States until you get here, and then you'll be able to really sort things out. So you have this idea in your head. So I'm like, okay, I already have a law degree. All I have to do is come here, complete my LLM, and I'm going to start working, which is a master's degree. Well, so I was researching at the library and I found WashU and I sent in, an inquiry. And sure enough, they responded. I also gave me some scholarship money. I was like, you know what? That's where I'm going to go. So I went
Mhm.
over there, completed my LLM. Well, come to find out, I can really do much with my LLM because to work at law firms in the United States or to do any legal work, I needed a JD. So I had to go
Oh.
back to school, start all over again.
So you actually obtained your LLM before your JD in the
Correct,
United
because
States.
don't forget, I already have a law degree from Nigeria, right? And
Right.
so because of that, I was able to get my LLM. And then after that, and I went back and got my JD. So I did it backwards.
You did it backward. I was just going to say, for those who don't know, an LLM is an advanced law degree. Not many attorneys obtain that degree, frankly. And I didn't realize the order in which you did that. That is a little unusual.
Yes. So that's how I came to WashU. And so once I finished my LLM and I did more research, I said, you know what, I might as well just stay here, And so that's why I ended up getting I was able to finish my JD in 2.5 years rather than 3.
Okay. How long did it take you to obtain the LLM? How long
One
in
year.
total? Okay,
One
so
year.
it was basically 3.5 years in St.
Correct.
Louis.
Correct.
Gotcha. Cool. And when did you graduate from? When did you get your JD degree?
I got my JD in 2001.
All right. Well, I think
December of 2001.
that makes us, Chris and I, both sufficiently feel old. That's what
When
that's
did
what I
you
shoot
graduate?
for. I graduated from law school in '92. So I knew I was older than you, and frankly, wasn't sure if it was 5 years or 15 years. It could have been any of those
But don't
numbers.
forget too, though, Tom, like I said, my journey was backwards,
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true.
So,
That makes me feel a little better. Thank you. So, what compelled you to write the book Japa Saga?
Sure. And Jackpot, just so you know, means it's a slang in Nigeria. It's a common slang, especially among the younger generation, to flee, to leave, okay, to emigrate. All right. So that's exactly what that term. So if you hear any Nigerian say Jackpot, meaning, oh, I'm getting the heck out of here, I'm leaving. Okay. So that's what that term means. So I
Hmm.
just thought about it. I said, Jack, okay, leaving saga, then all the stories that surrounds it. And so that's why I was able to I captioned it or I titled it that way. Now, to answer your question, believe it or not, I've always wanted to write ever since I was, young. I used to write news articles, and I'll tell you this: I used to write news articles in Nigeria. I would publish news pieces, and then one day, my father's friend, who was a connected person, came to him and told him because apparently they saw one of my news piece articles criticizing the military government. And he
Uh,
came to told my father that he thinks I should stop because if I didn't stop, they could blacklist me. And if they did that, I wouldn't be able to get a job. I wouldn't be able to get a passport. I mean, they would make things difficult for me. So my father told me that I needed to stop.
how
Okay.
old were you when that happened?
Oh, I think I was like maybe 18, 19.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. And so I just stopped. I stopped. And then when I came to the US in 97, after I finished law school, I kind of started writing. Believe it or not, it wasn't on a typewriter because at the time I didn't, I couldn't type or I didn't know how to type. So I was writing it, with my pen. And
Mhm.
then I wrote a manuscript. Till today, I don't even know what happened to that manuscript because we moved along. So in the last 3 years or so, things just kind of started falling, coming together. The pieces started coming together. And I said, you know what, I'm going to do this again. And so I was able to use all my experience back in Nigeria and presently and my law practice and everything all came. So in the last year was when I really sank my teeth into it and finished it early this year.
I think Chris and I can relate. I think both of us consider ourselves writers that don't write, frankly. One day I will get the courage to go as far as you've gone because I think it's an excellent first effort. It's a very interesting book. As I said, a lot of I have lots of questions that just end with "Did that happen?" And one of them is you talk about your young life, or it isn't you necessarily. This is a work of fiction, but you talk about Timmy's young life in Lagos, yeah, in Nigeria, and he had a mother who basically ran a shop in a big marketplace. It sounds like a big bustling marketplace. Was that drawn from real life as well? Because I felt that the description of that, all of that, was very detailed and felt very realistic to me.
Part of it. So when I
Yeah.
was growing up, my mother had, a shop and I would help to man the shop. I helped to sell stuff. But part of that is true, and part of a lot of that is fictionalized.
Hmm.
Okay, but I would go sell drinks. Okay,
Uh,
when I was young, and that was how I met people. Okay, I would go sell drinks, put my drinks on my head, and then I would go around the market and sell those drinks. My
is that
father hated
right?
that idea. He didn't know about it, just so you know. He hated it. But
That's funny.
and I mean, it's. I thought he built character. I met people. I knew learn how to negotiate. I learned people's character as a young person. So part of that was true.
It's funny you talk about negotiation because that is a big part of those early descriptions, those early scenes, and then you talk about it a little bit later as one of the, I guess, challenges that Timmy comes across when he becomes an attorney and people come for legal work. It sounds like that people wanted to trade or negotiate the amount. Did you run into that kind of
Oh,
stuff
till
personally?
today, Africans are like that, Tom. I'm
Yeah.
African, so I can proudly say it. Africans are like that. They come to you, you tell them, oh, you charge, I don't know, 5,000, just making this up. And they will come to you, well, they come to you with all this story. Well, how about, I mean, we came from Africa together, yada, yada. How about you consider 3,000? How do you go from 5,000 to $3,000? You could tell them it's a nickel and they will still want to bargain because that's just the African concept. They have to get a deal out of it. So it's the truth. And it's Nigerians would do it, Kenyans would do it, Ghanaians would do it. So it's because in Africa, you're taught not to take things at face value. When you go to the market, if they tell you, oh, this thing is a $10, you've got to bargain because somebody, if you don't bargain, then you've been taken advantage of. So that's a mindset.
All right, I have a cultural question that kind of comes through my son Jake, who is an avid soccer player, soccer observer, and I swear has learned so much about European culture, African culture, South American culture, just because of the internet and how many soccer players he follows. But one of the things that you mentioned briefly in your book that he told me was a true thing is the cultural battle over, and I'm not sure I'll pronounce this right, but jollof? Is it
Jollof
jollof?
rice.
Rice. Apparently, there is a huge battle between, I guess, and tell me, is it between countries? Is it
Ghana.
between,
Yeah,
okay.
between Ghana and Nigeria. It's called the Jollof Derby, right? Because Ghana believes they have the best jollof rice, and Nigeria, of course, believes we have the best jollof rice. So when we play international games or when we play soccer games, whoever team wins has the bragging right. So yes, it is true. Your son
That's
is
so funny.
absolutely on the money. Yes.
I'll have to give him credit for that then, because he told me that was true, and I said, well, yeah, because you do it. There's a nice little scene in the book where you've got some roommates, Timmy and his roommates, and they're arguing over those things. And it also came up on a TV show not too long ago, and I can't recall the details, but that's when my son piped up and said, that's a real thing. That's
It is true. It is
the
true.
people come to blows over the
Yeah.
the quality
It
of the
is.
rice.
Yeah.
That's very funny.
Well, let me chime in. I know you guys, Tom, read the book and have more details, and you guys share a legal background. But I'm intrigued by a couple things with immigration. So, one, I have a question that's a little more positive. But one of the most distressing parts of immigration is we're seeing now where, especially the US, but in other European countries, they're blaming just about everything on immigration and immigrants, illegal or otherwise. That's a long standing history in the United States, all the way back to, diseases that came over, that supposedly came over, like the yellow fever back in, I think it's like 1793. It was blamed on immigrants. And Bami, I'm interested in your take on that, especially someone who's dealing with what I think is one of the worst times, having kids who read this stuff on the internet and they quickly spout out, that immigration is, causing the rise in crime in certain European countries and all this stuff. I'm always about having, more context and understanding it. So that's one side of it. The other side is I'm stunned at the courage to move across the world. I get scared just moving from one house to another in the same state, trying to organize that type of move. What sort of informal or formal networks did you encounter when you came over that assisted you, or that maybe you're still seeing assisting people now with some of the challenges? Because you'll see certain cities are known for having a very vibrant community of this country or otherwise. So that was really complicated. That's how I ask questions. Have fun.
Yeah. You're right, Chris. So I was fortunate when I came to have a family member in the United States because, again, a lot of Africans, just like you said, if you're moving from one country to the other, they don't know people here. So you come through your connections. Okay, you come through your connections, and where I knew someone was in Houston. Okay, so that part of the book is true. My aunt was in Houston, and she had a restaurant in Texas, and so that was how I was able to come to the United States because again, I didn't know anybody, and so I stayed with her and my cousin for a little bit. Okay, and started working, and from there you start meeting people. But when you come and people are already here, they already have their roots, they're already grounded here. And if you're lucky to meet, to come and meet hardworking people or people, that are kind of established, it kind of sets you on the right path. Now, if you come into a situation where people aren't serious or, just enjoying life, then that may distract you. And I've seen that too. So, unless you're strong-willed, because I remember when I came, I've always known that I wanted to be a lawyer. I'd already finished my law degree, and so my aunt was kind of encouraging me to go to do nursing. Okay, it's part of the book. Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah, that
no,
was in
I'm
the
not
book.
doing nursing. I want to be a lawyer, you know. And so I followed that path, and also, my father would always drumming in my ears, well, there's a reason why you went over there. You have this opportunity. Not a whole lot of people have it. Don't squander it. And so you just have a heavy burden, I want to say, some sort of expectation of you. Okay. I'm the oldest in my family. So you have the sense that you have to be successful. You cannot muck it up, okay? Because you fail and you go back home, you're gonna be the laughing stock, okay? And people are gonna say, "Oh, look at him. He got a green card. He got a visa lottery to go to the US, man. And look at what he did with it." So that's part of what you think of. And so before you take any action, you always have to think, okay, where's this going to lead to? Okay. So, and sometimes things don't go well. I learned, I mean, Tom, I took the bar 3 times,
Yeah.
failed it, took, and there was a time that I was like, you know what, should I just pack this up and just leave? But failure at times is good, because if I'd come and things had worked out for me perfectly, I wouldn't have known the system. And so that's why I empathize, I sympathize, I can understand how other people, especially immigrants, what they go through. Not all immigrants or people that come to the United States are good. Don't get me wrong, Chris. But majority of people just want to come here and have a better life. I mean, why? My father was doing moderately okay. And if I had stayed, I would have ran this company in Nigeria. But I wanted to chart my own course. I wanted to find my own path. I wanted to be my own person. And that's why sometimes people leave because of poverty. People leave because of what they want to achieve. So, and you're right, Chris. There's just so much misinformation and disinformation when it comes to immigration. And we always have people, especially politicians, they want to find a scapegoat. When things aren't going bad, when things are not going well, let's blame the immigrants. Let's blame the immigrants.
Right.
So to answer your
going
question,
on right now.
I'm sorry.
I said that's certainly going on right now.
Yes, even in America, in Europe, and you have the sentiment that when somebody comes here and they work hard and they become doctors and they become lawyers, they're not stealing your job. I mean, they earned it. So you can't say, "How did I steal your job?" And so that for me is just it's just something hard to understand. And to also answer your question, you talk to I talk to my kids about it. My wife and I, we talk to our kids about it, and they ask questions, and we let them know. And that's the beauty of it. We let them know how much opportunity they have here, because when we were growing up, we didn't have this kind of opportunity. So they have to make the best of it.
Did you feel like Houston was a good place to start that journey? The book describes being in Houston. There's a large chunk in the book that talks about, first of all, it's an interesting story. It's a well-told story about Timmy kind of meeting someone who becomes that support system for him. But it also seems to describe Houston as a decent place to find that community and have people that are supporting you. Did you have that experience?
Oh yeah, Houston has one of the largest Nigerian communities in the United States. Okay, it's warm. Okay, you can find, Nigerians don't like cold weather. I told you, Tom. That's why.
That's why you got the hell out of Joliet.
Right? I play in Chicago. We don't like cold weather. We don't do cold weather. Okay, if a Nigerian is stuck somewhere in a cold weather, maybe because they're making a ton of money or they don't have a choice. If they could find a way out, they would. But Houston, I enjoyed Houston. I liked Houston, and so when I moved to St. Louis to go to law school, it was a complete contrast. And I always had a longing for Houston, like, man, why did I do this to myself? Why did I move out here? It's so cold. The first time I saw snow was in St. Louis, the first time ever I saw snow.
Well, it's funny because you don't necessarily think of Texas as a welcoming place. In some ways for anybody, but certainly for immigrants, it wouldn't necessarily be a place that, but I've heard that before. There's a really interesting television show I actually recommended a few episodes back called Mo, which is about a Palestinian immigrant, although he came when it was kind of like 9 years old or something, but it portrays Houston as being much more of a melting pot than I certainly would have perceived it before I saw that show. And I felt like your book really reinforced that for me. And I was wondering, it seemed like there must be a kernel of truth to it.
It is true, because Houston is big. It's a huge city, okay? You have a huge Latino population. You have a huge Nigerian population and other populations, and I think also because it's affordable compared to New York, compared to Chicago, compared to, Philadelphia. So that's another draw. But other parts of Texas may be different. But I'm telling you, Houston, Austin, I mean, yeah, but
Yeah.
mostly Houston, absolutely, absolutely.
So to me, some of the most compelling parts of the book are your descriptions as an author of Timmy's dealing with what I want to call low-level bigotry, kind of underlying racism. Not there are a couple dramatic scenes, one in particular that I won't spoil, but there's a lot of discussion of just a bad feeling that Timmy has, or just a discomfort. And I thought it was, first of all, really well done, but I also wanted to know if that all came from your own personal experience.
That's exactly right, Tom. I'd be walking on the street, I can't remember where, maybe St. Louis or walking on the
St. Louis would
street.
be a good guess, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
And you got
Unfortunately.
people crossing over. I see, or sometimes how people address you, or sometimes how people talk to you, talk down. And so yes, that would, and that's, I wanted to talk about that. I didn't want it to be overly pointed, but I wanted to point it out. Okay, that it's there. It's an undertone. It's there. Again, don't forget the title of the book is Jacques Saga. This is a story, or collection of stories of someone's experience. All right.
Mhm.
And it's not all rosy. It's not all, it's not all pleasant. So you just have to also bring out the good with the bad in this experience, or in this journey.
I thought it really was well done. And again, felt very personal. It felt like it was that it had arisen, at least partially, not just your imagination, let's put it that way.
Correct. Yeah, yeah. And I remember, being pulled over by, I remember the first time I was pulled over by a police officer. Man, I think I just arrived, maybe 6, 7 months. I mean, I was a nervous wreck because
Mm.
all the things I'd read, all the things I'd heard, and the police officer was polite, but I was a nervous wreck.
Don't want to forget to plug your book, which is called Japa Saga, Timmy's Search for the American Dream. You can find it on the website, bamideleadelayo.com, which is BAMIDELEADELAYO.com.
Right.
That's the site where I think you can find the book, description of the book, links to Eric, where you can buy it. Is that right, Bam?
Correct. Correct.
Excellent. You can also find the law firm, AdelayoLaw.com. Bami has an Instagram, Adelayo Law Firm, PLLC. You can find him on Facebook, Adelayo Law Firm. Just search for that. But what I would recommend, and I know you can find the book itself on Amazon. That's where I
Correct.
bought it. I bought a digital download of the book. I believe you can buy hard copies as well.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
So please make sure you go to Bami's website. I recommend the book, and I'm wondering, is there another one in the works?
Yes, I'm actually, it's so funny, but I don't think I have the time now. So I'm already conceptualizing one in my head. Okay. And that's how it starts. I'm thinking maybe sometime next year. Okay.
Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, we will be asking you to return as soon as that comes out. I guarantee you, and I'm
Thank you,
really
Tom.
interested
Thanks.
to read it. So I think what we are ready to start now is our special playlist. As with most of our guests, Bami, we asked you to come up with a theme, something that we could kind of select songs around. I'm really curious to see how all this fits together. Can you tell me what or can you tell the audience rather, what your idea was with respect to coming up with a theme for a music playlist for this?
Sure. Again, because my book focused on on Africa. Some part of the book was set in Africa, and the other part was set in the United States. So that's why, I wanted to talk about African music. That's why I wanted to make reference to African music.
And what I think my response to you was, we found that very interesting and really wanted to put your songs on a playlist, but weren't well informed enough for either Chris or I to pick 3 songs each that were African music. So we expanded it a little bit. Chris and I are also pulling some other international artists and songs into our playlist. but I think we and the listeners are very curious to hear what you have to recommend with respect
Sure.
to international and African music. So what's your first choice for the playlist?
Sure. My first choice, his name is Fela Kuti. And Fela, if you look him up, is a renowned Afro a beat musician. He's dead now. And I probably got some of my, I don't want to say maybe militancy from him growing up.
Yeah.
Because Fela, till his death, talked about how corrupt the Nigerian government was, right? He talked about, no good roads, no hospitals, and how the politicians stole money. So he would always bring that to the fore. And if you read part of the book too, I kind of mentioned that, because Nigeria had, when it comes to governance, especially we had issues with governance and a lot of military rule, right? The military would come, stage a coup and then kick out the democratic elected government. And Fela was against that. So he talked a lot about suffering in Africa and Nigeria. And so one of the ones I like is called Sorrow, Tears, and Blood. Basically what happened, when the military took over power, and how people were treated. And sometimes people were unlawfully detained, punished, and jailed. And he went through that too. So I'm sorry to be a downer, but that's why I picked that. All right.
You picked the right podcast. When we pick songs, probably about 50% of the time we're picking downers. So, and I'm familiar. And Fela was actually one of the names of African artists that I did recognize. Of course, I had your list, so I couldn't pick it myself. But I can't say that I listen to a lot of his music, but I recognize the name, and clearly he was a kind of an internationally renowned musician.
Oh yeah, and another thing too, Tom. If you notice, a lot of younger Nigerians these days, some of their music, you could hear some of their music. That genre came from Fela. Some of the beats, some of the drums, some of the rhythm, you can hear it. Burna Boy is a huge Nigerian musician. And as it turns out, Burna Boy's uncle, from what I understand, played played drums or something for Fela. So Fela had a lot of influence, or his music has a lot of influence on Nigerians now, the younger ones.
And do they acknowledge that? I mean, is it something that they pay tribute to him?
Sometimes they do, but when they sing it, you could just, I don't know, because of the copyright laws in Nigeria that's strong, but because if you try that here, I'm sure you're gonna have to pay some money. But I mean, I guess they just, maybe by just even singing the song or using the beats, maybe in their own way, maybe there's some sort of acknowledgement or respect or tribute.
Excellent. Chris, I think you're up next.
I am. I went in a slightly different direction just because I'm openly weak on African songs and African artists. So what I was thinking about was the influence of African traditions and songs on protest songs, particularly slave narratives and slave protest songs or civil rights songs as well. So I weave that through in some, but my first one, I went with Redemption Song by Bob Marley and the Wailers. And again, I know it's not African, but it's a fantastic song, and I will often quote lyrics, and it has one of my very favorites ever. It's emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. And then it continues on with this idea of freedom songs. And freedom songs sort of drove my theme. So that's my first one, is Redemption Song by Bob Marley.
I love Bob Marley. And I know that song very, very well.
Yes.
And he's very popular in Africa too. Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's another artist who clearly takes a political stand, right? Or took a political stand, and that's a great choice for this list, I think. My first choice for the list is a song called "Tough Times Never Last," which was on an album titled "Walking in the Footsteps of Our Fathers" by Ladysmith Black Mambazo, who I did not become aware of, frankly, until the whitest guy on earth did an album called Graceland. Paul Simon's album Graceland is the like a lot of Americans, I'm sure, was my first exposure to African music. That group performs on a lot of those songs, and it was really interesting to me and compelling to me. And I kind of did a little bit of a dive way back then when that album came out into some of those other artists that he was touting and taking on tour with him and all that kind of stuff. Ladysmith Black Mambazo is from South Africa, and the song is Tough Times Never Last from 2016.
Never heard that. So I'm gonna have to check it out.
I really like the song, and again, I think in Chris's case, my case as well, we had to do a little more research than normal for our playlist. Usually we can just pull a song out here or there, but it was worthwhile, really, because I did want to pick at least one African artist in my collection of international songs, and that's the first thing that came to mind, only because of Graceland. And now I've been listening to the whole album. I really like it.
Oh, nice. All right.
What is your next pick, Bami?
His name is King Sunny Ade. Okay, King Sunny Ade. So I am Yoruba. Another thing you have to know about Nigerians is, for some reason, again, goes back to the colonial roots. There's a division between ethnic tribes, right? Ethnic groups. So in Nigeria has three main ethnic groups. In the North, Hausa, you have the Igbo in the East and the Yorubas in the West. I'm from the West. But having said that, we have over 200 languages. But, yeah, over 200 dialects, but three main ethnic groups. So you could, like I said, I'm from the West. I could hear somebody speak Yoruba, and I may not even understand a word they're saying because of the dialect. All right. Really? So, but King Sunny Ade is Yoruba, and he plays basically feel-good music. Okay, feel-good music. And his album, I think was 7. I think he released that when I was actually in law school, so about 20-something years ago. And it's called 7 Degrees North. And he basically talked about, some of his, let me see. Some of them was, he does kind of praise worship, but in a funky, and it's called Juju, Juju, right?
Okay.
Yeah, in a funky, in a nice way, and I think part of that this album, he released it when he had just gone through a bad illness or sickness that people thought he was gonna die. So he came out with that album, and it was very, very nice. Basically, it was rejuvenated and talked about his life and talked about, to be how good to be alive and something to that effect. So King Sunny Ade is and it's old school. He's old school, and that my parents grew up listening to it, and so when my kids are like, what is he listening to? And it takes me back home. It takes me back home. So that's why I like him.
That's great. I can't wait to listen to that one.
All right. So for my second choice, I went with the merging of cultures. So there's one of my favorite bands, and as Tom knows, one of my favorite one of my favorite stories is about a professor I had at American University where I was doing my master's degree in history. She was part of the SNCC Freedom Singers during the Civil Rights Movement. And then she went on to form a band called Sweet Honey in the Rock. And they sang a lot of stuff a cappella, a lot of old slave narratives and more updated protest songs. But one of the more interesting recordings they did was a version of Woody Guthrie's Deportees. So the story of folks being deported back. And so when I read a little bit more about your background, I thought that this would be with your immigration law, a sad version. But I mean, again, another great line is, you won't have a name when you ride the big airplane. All they will call you will be deportees. So the depersonalization of persons as they are just labeled immigrants or deportees. So, and a fantastic version by the band Sweet Honey in the Rock.
I'm gonna have to look that up too. And there's a part of the book too. I don't know if you remember, Tom, when people get deported, to Nigeria, when you get, again, the same thing when you get put on a plane. I'm glad you brought that up, Chris.
Yes.
And, when you're on a plane, you're just a number, okay? And then you're shipped out. Once you arrive in Nigeria, you hand it over to immigration officials who would also ask for bribes. So yeah, that's familiar, Chris.
That's Timmy's uncle, if I'm not mistaken.
That's exactly right.
Was part of that story, and you're right, that I didn't put it together until you just said that, but the book kind of captures that feeling of, now what do you do, kind of.
Correct.
Excellent choice. My background for my second choice is that, as you know, Bammy, the city of Joliet has a huge Hispanic population. And I was actually looking at the statistics. My sons are seniors at Joliet West High School this year. And I looked at the demographic breakdown, and it is approximately 58% of the student body at Joliet West is Hispanic.
Wow.
And most of that, I think, is primarily people of Mexican heritage. I think there are some other, Latinos that go to the school, but it's primarily people from Mexico. And of course, Chicago also has a huge Mexican population as well. So my kids who played varsity soccer for 4 years, played on teams both in high school and in their club that have lots of Mexican kids that play, or the sons of Mexican immigrants, that kind of thing. And those guys, when they have control over the music in the locker room or whatever they're warming up to, play a lot of pop music and rap from Mexico.
Really?
So, yeah, so my kids, my sons Tommy and Jake, love that music. They don't speak Spanish very well, although they took 3 years of it. But they can sing the songs, they can sing the lyrics, and I kind of relied on them. I went to my Apple music collection because they share their collection with me, so I could see the songs that they listen to. So I listened to a couple of them in anticipation of this, and found a song called "Muerte in Hawaii," which I think means death in Hawaii, from a band called Calle 13. Or maybe it's Calle Trece, I imagine. It's a really funny love song from a guy who's bragging about what his girlfriend's love does for him. And it's really, I listened to 3 or 4 songs trying to find something. I wanted to find something that was, a song from kind of Mexican pop, only because of my boys. When I actually looked up the lyrics, I also looked up specifically where Calle 13 is from. And turns out they're from Puerto Rico. so it's not a Mexican song, it's a Puerto Rican song. So I didn't fulfill my goal in picking a Spanish language song, but it's really good. And I think it'll be really good on the playlist. So instead of changing it, I just decided I would explain my thinking the whole time.
All right, all right.
So it's called Muerte in Hawaii. It's really, really, it's kind of funny, and it's really kind of cool, upbeat,
Okay.
high tempo song.
I have to check it out.
It's good. It's I enjoyed it a lot. So that takes us back to you. You have the what pick are we on at this point? I believe we are on 7th. The 7th pick for the playlist.
So we have Salif Keita, Salif Keita. And the reason that is a Malian, he's not Nigerian. Salif Keita is a Malian songwriter who was an outcast, is an albino. He was cast out by his family because for some reason they believe in that albinos are, it's a curse to be an albino. And so he's from a royal family in Mali, and he was cast out. And then he went out and became a phenomenal, he's called the golden voice of Africa. Went out and became this phenomenal singer. He's also a songwriter, and so he's fantastic. I like his song, even though Mali is a French-speaking country, and probably his dialect I don't understand a word, but it's just the beat. It's just the beat, and just when you hear him singing, it's just there's something about his voice that's just, I don't know how to describe it. It's almost, you should have some sort of sense that just takes you. It's just beautiful. And so that's why I picked. Again, he's old school. And again, like I said, because I like to root for the underdogs. Okay, I like to root for the underdogs because sometimes people look at me as an underdog, and just, so that's part of the reason why I kind of like Salif Keita.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. Again, not familiar with the artist. I will ask though, is there a specific song from Salif Keita that you want to pick?
Yes. So that song is called Madan, Madan. And we could look it up on YouTube. When the intro of the song, just the drums and the beat alone before you even start singing is just scintillating.
Yeah,
Just
that's awesome.
amazing, just amazing. Just it's you know you're talking about a mixture of the drums and the guitar and the beats. It's just amazing, amazing stuff.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to that one. Final pick, Chris?
So my change was to pay a little homage to Bami's current home state of Arizona, and to try to also reference back to the first song title that he had. It's by a band called the Sand Rubies, who Tom probably knows are also the Sidewinders. The Sidewinders had to change their name. They became the Sand Rubies, which is kind of a weak name. But they had a song called Blood on Our Hands that they recorded under both names. It's this good upbeat song. They pay tribute to Hispanic culture in Arizona, especially the name of this album is Kuacha, which I don't know what it means. Hopefully it doesn't mean anything offensive. Um, but so my song is by the Sand Rubies, Blood on Our Hands. So referencing back in a little way to Sorrow, Tears, and Blood, just with the same word.
So, Chris, when you say so, are they from Arizona?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
So they're not around anymore. The lead singer's name is Rich Hopkins. There's some other bands out there that are around and are a lot of fun, but not as serious. So it's one of those bands that really got screwed over by the music industry. And by the time they got everything worked out, they'd sort of fallen apart as a band. So they tried to go under this name Sand Rubies and recorded a couple okay albums. They seemed to be on an upward trajectory, and that sort of got shut down. So not ideal to the theme, but I wanted to tie in somehow to where you're at, and that was the Arizona connection.
That takes me to the penultimate song. This is international. Doesn't really fit with any of the other songs there, but it is one of the funniest songs I've ever heard from a really funny. It's actually a kind of a novelty song from a band slash performing troupe called Flight of the Conchords. They had a short-lived TV show on HBO back, I want to say in the mid, like 2008, something like that. It's two Kiwis from New Zealand. The song is called Hip Hopopotamus versus Rhymenoceros, and it is the funniest rap song I've ever heard two white guys do in my life. I was gonna try to do and dig a little bit further, and I thought, hey, those guys are from New Zealand. I've never put this song on a playlist, so I think you'll find it really, really funny. They're just really hilarious comedians. They're actors too. So now these days they don't perform together anymore, but they did this quirky little TV show for a while, and they were playing musicians who were I think they left New Zealand for the United States was the whole idea. And they wanted to, have this big music career, which never panned out, but they would play these shows and they would write the most ridiculous songs you've ever heard. So Hip Hopopotamus versus Rhymenoceros is my third international song for the playlist. Right. Just to throw a little change up in there.
All right.
Before we go to Bami's last song, Kawachi means shit. So there you go.
There you go. All right. That's
I said I hope it wasn't offensive. It is.
Now I'm gonna have to really look them up, Chris.
That's hilarious. So you get the honor of the final pick. I imagine a little more serious than my pick for the playlist. What do you have for our final?
So I have this lady called Asha. So it's pronounced Asha, but if it's ASA. And she was born in Paris to Nigerian parents. Again, another thing about Nigeria, they like to travel. Nigerians travel. Yeah. She was born to Nigerian parents in Paris who were working and studying cinematography, films in France at the time. And she returned to Nigeria when she was about 2 years old. And she's from Ogun State, okay? And she returned to Paris when she was 18, and her music career took off. And that name, apparently, Asha, Asha is a bird. Is a Yoruba word for a bird, like a vulture. So it turns out her grandmother used to make fun of her and said, "Oh, Ojue, like eyes were like the eyes of a vulture." So that's
Oh,
how she
jeez.
took that nickname, and she ran with it. And she's very she's popular. Okay, she also reminds me of Tracy Chapman. She's
Hmm.
kind of folksy, kind of what's the word I'm looking for here? Pop, indie, Afrobeat.
Mhm.
Yeah, so just sedate. And so the one I will recommend is called the Good Times, and she sings that song as a tribute to friendship. Okay, that sometimes you would have friends that will stand by you even in hard times, even more than family members. So that's why I picked that one. So
That's
I'm
great.
giving that as a tribute to you, Tom and Chris, for being my
Oh,
friend.
oh, well, thank you. That's
Perfect. Thank you.
fantastic.
Yeah,
That's
All
the
right.
nicest thing anybody's said to us on this podcast, I'm pretty sure.
that is far nicer than anything we say to each other, too.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Excellent. Well, that will be our playlist. That's 10 songs. We will release the playlist the Friday before this episode comes out. And I don't remember, this should be dropping on May 26th. So by the time you listen to this episode, you should be able to search for a third song playlist on either Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, or YouTube Music. This will be released and posted separate from our other ongoing playlists. So please search for it and listen to it. I think it's a really cool collection of songs. And I think we did a decent job of staying within a theme there. And when we diverged, I think it was for good reasons. So I think it should be a good one. So thank you for adding to that, Bammy. I think that's going to be a lot of fun to listen to. Just wanted to give
Thank
you
you very much, Chris. Nice meeting you. Tom,
You
good to
too.
see you again.
keep us posted about any new works of fiction or
Of course,
otherwise.
of course.
Good luck this weekend when Liverpool wraps up the Premier League.
Amen. Thank you, Tom. Thank you.
And
I'm looking forward to it. Number 20, man. Bye.
yeah, we'll
Take
take
care,
care.
baby.
See you, baby. It's nice
Bye.
talking to
All
you.
right.
Bye.
All right, that brings us to our recommendations. Starting a couple seasons ago, we decided to pick a year that lined up with the episode number for that show. So we are on episode 8 of season 7. We're in the 2000s, or the aughts, as they like to be called. And so that means we have recommendations from the year 2008. What do you got, Tom?
Well, I started with movies. I Googled, looked for films that came out in 2008, and this is my description of the year 2008 in film. It was the year of awful comedies by funny people. There are so many bad comedies that came out with people that I really like. Like The Love Guru came out with that was Mike Myers. That's just a fucking terrible movie.
Stupid movie.
So awful. Drill Bit Taylor was an Owen Wilson movie. It's also awful. You Don't Mess with the Zohan came out. It's Adam Sandler. It's awful. The Pineapple Express was actually kind of a hit, but I thought it was a terrible movie, and that was with a couple other funny actors whose names I don't remember. It was a bad year for movies, in my opinion. So my recommendation for 2008 is Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles. It was a television show. Lena Headey was the star of it. She played Sarah Connor. Summer Glau, who is like Miss Sci-Fi TV. She was in Firefly and a whole bunch of other science fiction TV shows. Uh, it's it's basically a TV show set in between a couple of the Terminator movies, and it's right when Lena Headey is starting to train to be the badass that she eventually becomes. I think in Terminator 3. I really liked it. I thought it was a good show. It only lasted for 2 seasons. I think there were 31 episodes total. It was canceled, and there was a big fan effort to bring it back. I think a lot of people did like it, but it was unsuccessful. I think it's worth going back and watching, and I think it was one of the better shows that premiered in 2008.
I just want to reiterate the underwhelming choices for other categories because
Yeah, bad
like
year.
the one movie that was really, really good, I think you'd already recommended, which was The Wrestler. And I think you'd pick that for another episode, maybe.
Yeah, maybe a sports episode or something. You're right. That is a good film, and I
Yeah.
missed that. I didn't realize that came out in a way. That's pretty good.
So instead, I went the same path that Tom did, which was TV shows. I skipped over the most obvious choice for different reasons than Tom. Breaking Bad came out in 2008. I've only seen like one or two episodes, so I couldn't rightfully recommend it. Tom passed on it because it's probably the most obvious choice that we could have made, which we try to avoid. So I went a little underrated, I would argue, which is a USA show, In Plain Sight, which is the story of two US Marshals played by Mary McCormick, who I think is a very entertaining actress. And I loved her sidekick, Frederick Weller. I thought he was funny as hell in the show. It's a fairly traditional USA Network show where they are putting people into protective custody and ensuring their safety and all that other stuff. All the drama that happens with that, and there's some background stories with her character's name is also Mary, her sister, and her ex-boyfriend, and all this other stuff. But the dialogue's great. As I said, I think Frederick Weller is a very entertaining actor. There's some other bit characters like the boss is Paul Ben Victor. I'm sure if you saw him, you know who he was. He's funny at times. So good show. Worth checking out if you haven't. There was this time where I thought USA Network put out some of the most consistently entertaining shows, and this was one of probably the lower end of them, but still entertaining.
You took the words out of my mouth. And actually, it must have been right in the mid 2000s there that I watched a lot of USA shows. I really like this show. I don't think it lasted too many seasons either, but
Um,
I'm a big Mary McCormick fan. I think she's great in everything she does. She had a secondary role in The West Wing toward the end of its run. She's a really good actress, and she really played this kind of, tough U.S. Marshal role. I thought she did a really nice job.
yeah,
I really did like that show. I'd forgotten all about it, but that was the same time like USA had Burn Notice, and I think that's when Monk was out. I think Monk was one of those shows. Like they were all a little bit formulaic,
yeah.
but I
Psych.
watched Psych,
Yeah.
yeah, and Psych. I watched all those shows for a little bit of time. Good
Yeah.
choice.
Thank you, sir.
That takes us to our staff picks.
Just around the corner from you.
Every episode, we try to recommend something that's new or just coming out. Occasionally, we reach back to something that's older that we don't think people have heard or seen before or read before. In this case, I believe, though, we are looking forward. My choice, my staff pick for this episode is an album called El Cabron by Pug Johnson, which just came out just within the last week or so. He's a Texas singer-songwriter, sounds very traditional. This album is a little swampy. He's got a little kind of Texas-Louisiana border feel to it. In describing it himself, Pug Johnson says it has a border music vibe. To me, it reminds me a lot of Wayne Hancock, who's also kind of a traditional country voice, but who's putting out new music fairly regularly. And I didn't know anything about Pug Johnson, but now I'm going to reach back because I think he's got a couple prior albums, and I really enjoyed this one. So look for El Cabron by Pug Johnson.
Nice one. I will check that out. I could have done a little connector in words if I could just find the damn thing. I think Joe Pug came out with a live album somewhere near you. That's what I was looking for because I swear
Is
it's
that
like,
right? I love Joe Pug.
oh, here it is. Yeah, live at the Old Town School of Folk Music.
Holy shit. In fact, how did I not go to that show? I'm a member of the Old Town School. Like I get cheap tickets. Well, not cheap, but cheaper tickets.
Yeah, so that's not my recommendation, but I did see that on the list. And you're more of a Joe Pug fan than I am, but and Old Town School of Folk Music is your thing.
Yeah, you've just embarrassed me completely. I had no idea.
I tried to. That was what I was trying to do, is make you look like an idiot.
Well done. Yeah, there it is, son of a bitch.
Sons of bitch. All right, I went in a slightly different direction. I was having a hard time finding something I really want to recommend as new. And then I remembered that a future guest of ours, I think we can now say that, Matthew Grimm, who's the former lead singer of the Hang Dogs, he has a really outstanding song out there on SoundCloud. The name of the song is Cable Street. It's a remake of a song that I had never heard before by the band The Young'uns. And The Young'uns, I think, are from Ireland, and they're an a cappella band that does a lot of traditional music like this. This song describes basically the riots of Cable Street, which was back during World War II times when I think they were called black shirts. So basically, fascists were wanting to march on London, and the police and the community decided to try to stop them, and it resulted in a riot, and I think several deaths. But it's this really uplifting song about rising together as a community and standing up against evil, or in this case, fascists. And Matthew Grimm does a really great job of reinterpreting it. He has this knack for sort of being very timely with his more political music, and I think this one is a anthem for our times, unfortunately, as we are dealing with our own versions of fascism. I don't want to overstate what we're dealing with, but I don't think I am, unfortunately. So Cable Street, I'm not sure if it'll come out on a future album or not, but if you're on SoundCloud, check it out. Really good song.
Yeah, I got a chance to listen to that one as well. A really good song, really. It's nice to hear Matthew Grimm putting out new music, even if it's not technically new. Our next and final segment is playlist picks. We are going to, as in every episode, pick a song each to add to our running playlist for season 7, the third song in, which again, you can find on Spotify, you can find it on YouTube Music and Apple Music and Amazon Music. We try generally to fit our theme, and again, I think we did a pretty good job. Do you want to give your song for the playlist?
I do. So as I'm deleting out the other two choices that I was going to make, I am going with Sonica USA by Alejandro Escovedo, one of our favorites. We've both seen him live. I've seen him a couple times. It's from the 2018 album The Crossing, which is could have recommended this if it wasn't a playlist. It's a concept album about two immigrants, one from Mexico, one from Italy, goes back and forth on their stories. This was the first single off the album. I like it because it has some of those references to cultural references. Some punk bands are referenced, but Alejandro Escovedo described in an interview that it reminds him of coming to age musically and starting to appreciate his Hispanic background and artists like him. So I think the opening line is I think it was the Zeros, and they looked like me. It's just a typically strong Alejandro Escovedo album. Every once in a while, I sort of forget about him, and then I have some topic like this one that pulls me back in, and I'm going to listen to that album a few more times today.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good one. My choice for the playlist this week is a song called Bolt Cutter Again by Ike Riley. It's from the album Crooked Love, which came out in 2017, and it is a song about basically foreign travelers, maybe immigrants, being detained at the airport. He wrote a song called Bolt Cutter, which I didn't get a chance to listen to before this one, but I've been listening to Bolt Cutter again over and over recently. In the opening stanza, he makes reference to the fact that it says, "I can't find my people, got this travel ban." And then later toward the end of the song, one of my favorite lines is, just think it's so funny. He basically, in the song, he begs someone to bring bolt cutters to baggage claim so they can free his pretty ladies. The last two lines are, "The car was at the curb and I threw him the keys. We went to Gene and Georgetti's with the refugees." Gene and Georgetti's is a famous Chicago restaurant, and I just think that's the funniest line to finish a song on. But Ike Riley is definitely kind of an activist guy, and this is a great song that, although it came out in 2017, again, unfortunately, kind of fits the feel these days when it comes to immigration and what the U.S. is doing. So I think two good songs for the playlist. Look for those wherever you stream your music.
Nice choice. Enjoyed listening to Bami, which I mostly did, although I had one long, complex question, which he did a great job of answering. Do you want to go ahead and repeat his plugs? They will be on our
Yes.
website.
Yes. So the website for his book, which is called Japa Saga, is www.bamideleadelayo.com. I will spell it BAMIDELEADELAYO.com. That's where you can find links to his book. I think you'll enjoy it. It is really, as you can tell from the interview, an autobiographical novel, and you can really feel the stuff that happened to him. You can also find his law firm at adelayolaw.com. You can find him on Instagram and Facebook under Adelayo Law Firm or Adelayo Law Firm PLLC. Bami's a great guy. If you need legal work in the Phoenix area, I recommend you contact him. And maybe more importantly, look for his book on Amazon and wherever you find your books.
Third Song In is recorded in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and Joliet, Illinois. And today we included Phoenix, Arizona.
Email us at thirdsongin@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought of this episode or any of our episodes. You can also follow, rate, and review our podcast. Look for us wherever you stream your podcast and give us all of your goddamn stars. Written reviews are helpful. Downloading is helpful. Please share our podcast with whoever you would like and tell people about it.
We also ask you to check out our website, thirdsonginpodcast.com. We'll have links to all of Bami's stuff, including to his book and to his law firm.
We also have a Facebook page. You can follow us there. You can communicate with us through Facebook. We do have a weekly blog. Chris and I tend to alternate articles for the blog. You can find a link to the blog on our website, thirdsonginpodcast.com, but you can also find it on Substack. And I would ask, why don't you subscribe at both places? Is it going to kill you?
It shouldn't. And
It shouldn't.
I guess if you're doing it on your phone and you're not paying attention, you trip and fall into like something that could kill you.
Listen,
that
if
could
it's
kill
going to kill you, don't fucking do it. But otherwise, just subscribe.
You've been listening to Third Song In with Chris Derrickson and Tom Polachek. Thanks for listening.
And then I didn't even know for probably the first 6 months or so that I knew him. I didn't even know he went to WashU Law. Like that was a complete surprise to me. I was like, wait a second, I went to WashU. He was like, shut up, get out of the bathroom. Our next and final segment. Oops, sorry, go ahead.
I fucked up. I was just going to say, all right, that takes us to. And so we had to talk over each other at one point. So the only way we don't is if I don't talk.
You know what? That's fucking perfect. I don't need to do a goddamn thing.
All right, good enough.
I thought you were veering away, and then bam, you brought it right back. That was perfect.